Hello, everyone. Happy New Year, and thank you so much for joining us. This is Lisa Schwartz. I'm very happy that our presenter today is our very own Curriculum Development Manager, Donna Knapp. And I have to say that I was out a little bit for the holidays and stuff, and when I saw the topic of this month's webinar, I didn't at first see that it was our webinar with Donna presenting it, and I thought, man, that sounds great. I want to go to that. So, and then I figured out it was us, and I thought, well, boy, I really want to attend that. Anyway, with no further ado, a woman who needs no introduction, but I shall provide it, to Donna, I turn it right over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. And yes, Happy New Year. It's kind of, I don't know about y'all, but I'm a little bit in shock that we're getting towards the end of January already. And, but, you know, that's life these days. So welcome to Itsm Academy. And, you know, many of you have attended our webinars before. We focus on things like Agile and Devops experience, process design, lean and value stream mapping, agile service management. And I'm a consummate lifelong learner. And so I hold certifications in a lot of those areas. And what I really love about where we are today is the fact that all of these different frameworks are starting to come into alignment and are starting to work together to enable our organizations to be successful. And so that's really what I'm going to talk about today. I want to start off with this slide. I gave a state of presentation in 2018, and I included this particular slide, and I think it's still very, very relevant today, that within our organizations, we have so many different transformations underway, whether it's digital, agile, DevOps, service management. With the introduction of ITIL 4, cultural transformations are going on as organizations introduce concepts like safety culture and just culture. So there's a huge amount of transformation going on. And oh, by the way, I was saying all of this pre-COVID. So let's understand where we are, right? We had a lot going on prior to COVID. And according to McKinsey, 69% of board of directors say the effects of the pandemic, the economic crisis that came along with it, and the current social crisis are accelerating their digital initiatives. So if we didn't all understand how important digital was coming into this, we sure do now. One of the things I think that's interesting about McKinsey's data on the right-hand side is it talks about not only accelerating digital business initiatives, that's 69%. And if you think about COVID, who are the organizations that are really thriving? It's the organizations that already had undergone a digital transformation or figured out how to do it really quickly so that they could continue to do business. But I think it's worth noting that second line item there, 60% also are focusing on improving operational excellence. So let's understand that we can't just, very, very quickly accelerate, our introduction of new digital products and services if we don't have the operational excellence internally to ensure that we can deliver those products and services reliably. So understanding always that we can't sacrifice things like quality and reliability for speed. So as I've looked at this year and I've watched how organizations have come through this year, to me, I have a big smile on my face, not because of everything that's going on around us. That's certainly not worthy of a smile, but certainly a smile in that our industry is coming to fruition, right? So all of the things that we've been doing over the last 10, 11, 12 years are starting to pay off. We are, I think, starting to stop having these conversations about is it ITIL or DevOps or ITIL or Agile, and we're starting to understand that they really all work together. They all have a role to play within our organizations. And if you look at the highest performing organizations, those organizations have figured that out. They draw from these different frameworks. They figure out how to integrate them. and enable them to work together across the end-to-end value stream. This particular image is drawn from our course, our SRE Foundation, which is a DevOps Institute course. And we could have lots of discussions and debates about the lines and the arrows and where the dotted lines are. I kind of pulled it as is from the course. But again, the idea is that while somebody who is, and I'm using air quotes here, doing DevOps may think that what they're doing represents the entire value stream, in all likelihood, it doesn't. There's a lot of activity that occurs before the work they're doing. There's a lot of activity that occurs after the work we're doing. And we all have to understand that. We have to not only excel and get good at what we do within our organization, but we also have to recognize that there's a lot of other work that other people in our organization do. And we all need to work together to continuously improve. And this is proven in the 2020 Enterprise DevOps Skills Report put out by Devops Institute. If you see on the right-hand side, you see that a lot of organizations are introducing, right? See all of the above. You see, pretty similar patterns in terms of organizations introducing things like ITIL and design thinking and value stream mapping, and even how quickly SRE has emerged as being relevant within organizations today. And they're all kind of sitting on this foundation of Agile and DevOps in terms of most used. And that just really speaks to kind of how quickly those have become the norm in our organizations. So I want to do a really quick poll, and this is just short and simple. Which have you adopted in your organizations? And you can pick as many as apply in your organization. And I think that we're going to find that, in a lot of cases, we a little bit align with what we're seeing in this particular survey from DOI. So give it a few more minutes, or a few more seconds, I guess. We've got 66%. Still seeing a couple of responses coming in. Thank you, everybody, for voting so quickly. We've got 86%, a few more seconds. Going once, going twice. Oh, 80. So let me share the results. So perhaps not a surprise given what Itsm Academy does, and given who the audience of our webinar typically is. We have ITIL coming a little higher up on the top, 91% ITIL. But look at 80% Agile, 68% DevOps, right? So we really see strong influence there. 41% lean, and I think some of you, when we get to talking about lean, you might realize, oh, we are kind of doing lean more than we even think we are. And 7% SRE. So SRE is just emerging and being recognized in the enterprise. But I suggest that if we do a similar webinar next year, we're going to see that SRE number really pop up. So it's not one or the other. It's really all of the above. So let's talk for a minute about IT service management, and let's just recognize that it's really a critical part of digital transformation, because again, with IT service management, we look at that end-to-end value stream. We look at how we decide what products to have in our portfolio. We look at how we design and then develop and deliver those products and services. And certainly COVID has taught us that the reliance on technology, particularly digital technology, is not going to slow down anytime soon. So IT service management is really even more important today than it has been in the past. And what we have to recognize is that the what and why of IT service management hasn't changed. Thinking about value, thinking about being customer-centric as an organization, being service-oriented as an organization, thinking about things like customer experience. Those things will always serve you well. It's really the how that must change, and the how of IT service management has to change because we have to embrace these new ways of thinking and working. And we could perhaps start to put quotes around that word new now. These new ways of thinking and working, Agile, Lean, DevOps, SRE, they've been around, right? They've been around for a long time. And it's now a matter of adapting our IT service management practices and processes so that we can speed up, so that we can streamline the work that we're doing, so that we can integrate our work with these other ways of working, and really, most importantly, so that we can automate what we're doing and then free up human resource to be creative and be innovative and be thinking about, you know, how we can even further improve. So, not based on any particular poll, just general observations. And I'd like you all to chat in if you have any other additional observations that you all would add to this list. Some of the really strongest trends I'm seeing in terms of IT service management include, number one, experience matters. So we have really gained appreciation in the last several years of the importance of customer experience, the importance of employee experience. And you see, even with ITIL 4, there's a whole entire module that's devoted to the customer journey and understanding and improving that customer journey. So speaking of ITIL 4 is very much gaining acceptance. Enterprise service management is gaining ground. So understanding that the concepts we've talked about for years in IT, in relation to IT service management, can really be used by other parts of the organization. And we're starting to see, HR, facilities, different areas within our organizations, marketing teams embracing the concepts of service management. Reducing toil or manual, work that has no value, automating our work activities are really becoming major priorities. I think it's really an interesting time because there's a lot of emphasis on innovation and finding new ways of working, but it's also important to recognize that at some point you're going to find that this new way of working is successful, and now let's normalize it, let's standardize it. And once we can standardize our work, then we can automate our work. And then again, the cycle begins again, right? We free up our human beings to focus on innovation and doing creative ways of working. So for everybody that kind of likes to say we don't need no stinking processes, the reality is you have to think about what it is that you are automating. You're automating processes. And until you've standardized your processes, you're really in danger of automating things like waste and automating, right, poorly performed activities. And I think a big benefit of IT service management right now is that we're really learning how to talk about outcomes. We're really finding, and ITIL 4 is very much influencing this emphasis on the co-creation of value with our customers, of focusing on the outcomes of our organization. So talking about things like revenue and growth, and for government agencies, the achievement of our agency's mission, right? Whatever are the greater goals of your organization, moving away from this focus on the very, very IT-centric, internally looking metrics, and really, again, focusing on those outcomes that are really going to enable our organizations to survive. And then as we come out of the pandemic, recover and thrive. So we see with ITIL 4 that emphasis on, value streams, breaking down those silos, and really looking at a more macro level, making sure that we're operating in a very efficient and effective way. Principles based, so moving away from strict adherence to processes. And again, processes are important because we need to automate them, but we were perhaps a little overly rigorous with our processes. So what principles allow us to do is just provide some boundaries, provide some guidelines, and then also ensuring that we're integrating with things like Agile and Lean and DevOps. So ITIL 4 is here. It's been very, very well received. And perhaps something you all haven't heard yet that you're hearing today, because IDLE 4 has been so very well received, Axelos has announced that they are retiring IDLE version 3. So you can see the dates here. Foundation will be discontinued in July of 2021. The advanced courses will be discontinued in January of 2022. And managing professional transition, for those of you who are IDLE experts or who are close to being an IDLE expert, is going to be discontinued in July of 2022. So I really want to be clear about this. There is no stop doing IDLE 3, start doing IDLE 4. Continue to leverage, y'all have done a lot of great work with IDLE 3. You have been able to make significant improvements in your organizations with IDLE 3. You might even continue with some of those improvement projects depending on the maturity of and the circumstances and the needs of your particular organization. But I very much challenge everyone to take a look at IDLE 4 and really start to gain an understanding of how it is, in fact, very, very different. But I think more importantly, it's very, very relevant to organizations like yours. A lot of you came in and said, we've got Agile, we've got Lean, we've got DevOps. And so, IDLE 4 really speaks to that audience. So I want to just do one more quick poll, just out of curiosity. So which version of IDLE is predominantly being practiced within your organization currently? And I think we're going to see a lot of IDLE 3s, which is understandable. 73% IDLE 3 right now, 14% IDLE 4, 6% don't know, and I understand that. 11% we haven't adopted IDLE. That's interesting. We've got 73%. A few more seconds. All right, getting close. Going once, going twice. All right. So in the end, we have 65% IDLE version 3, 19% IDLE 4. So it was nice to see that number hop up. 7% don't know, and 9% we haven't adopted IDLE. And I'd be curious if some of y'all could put in the chat window. I'd be curious to know if you haven't adopted IDLE, was there a conscious reason for that, right? Why is that? The 7% who don't know, I quite frankly think that's okay. I mean, and here's the point of this slide, that IDLE will come together in the end, right? Right now, we're talking about IDLE version 3 and we're talking about IDLE version 4, but when IDLE version 3 has been retired and we've all kind of made our way to IDLE 4 in whatever way we make it, and you can see here, this is an example of like a joint where how you bring IDLE 3 and IDLE 4 together in your organization is going to vary, right? Different organizations are going to pick and choose different parts of the framework, but in the end, you'll pull it together. And let's call it what it is. Let's call it continual improvement. So again, there's no stop doing IDLE version 3, start doing IDLE version 4. Continue your IDLE version 3 journey. Continue your journey, your continual improvement journey, leveraging IDLE in whatever version is applicable to your organization. So part of what I wanted to talk about was the state of DevOps. And when we talk about DevOps, we think about it in the context of the cultural aspects of enabling dev and ops, and really, quite frankly, everybody in between, to work more closely together so that we can increase software delivery velocity, improve reliability, and build shared ownership. Now, I have to say that I think it's interesting. We still talk to folks today who are, I'm using air quotes here, doing DevOps, but it's really big dev, little ops, right? It's being driven by the development environment. There's very, very little engagement with the ops folks. And so it, it kind of doesn't reflect the spirit of what the movement was all about. And that is that cultural transformation, that collaboration and improved communication that occurs. But what I think is interesting is, and I've included the Gartner hype cycle here. Um, look at where DevOps is, right? Let's kind of remember that DevOps is 11 years old now, right? So it's not new anymore. It's not hype anymore. It has been proven, right? There are practices that have been introduced by DevOps that do, in fact, enable organizations to achieve that higher velocity, that higher level of reliability. And notice where, ITIL is kind of right, not too far behind its heels. And what I think about is always interesting about the hype cycle with Gartner is, and this is me kind of translating it, it's, where we go from thinking something is a silver bullet, right? It's like, ooh, it's the new shiny next best thing. And let's all start taking a look at it. And it's going to solve all of our problems. Y'all have probably been down those paths in some of your organizations. And then we kind of go through, this recognition that like, oh man, this is hard, right? It's culture change, or there's a lot of technological change, or there's lots of new skills that people need, right? For a myriad of reasons. This is hard. But eventually organizations kind of hunker down and they figure out how to make it work within their organizations. We've preached this forever with ITIL, adopt and adapt, right? Figure out how to make it work within your organization, given its circumstances and its needs and its goals. And then we kind of reach this point where it really is benefiting our organization, and it really is enabling the people within our organization to be more productive. So let's recognize that, first of all. The fact that ITIL 4 gives a nod to DevOps speaks to the fact that it's not just some new shiny thing to chase after anymore. It is in fact viewed as best practice. And so the organizations that really haven't looked at DevOps, typically it's for a reason, like they don't do any software development in-house, right? Or, for whatever reason, it's not at all applicable to them. So one thing to understand about DevOps, though, is that it is still, despite the fact, right, that it's 11 years old, we are absolutely still seeing organizations that are working on it, right? You can see that a very, very high percentage of organizations apply DevOps at a project level or related to multiple projects, and a smaller percentage is applying it across their entire enterprise. And that's a very typical way to start. A lot of organizations start out by looking at DevOps in the context of maybe those mission critical services, those services that have been developed in the cloud, or that are based on more modern technologies, microservices, and can leverage the more modern technologies. But I actually had the other day a sneak peek at the 2021 version of this report. And one of the things that they're talking about there is the need to apply DevOps in those organizations where there's a mainframe. And yes, organizations do still have mainframes. And yes, they do, in fact, still play critical roles in some organizations. And so we're really starting to see organizations thinking about how to apply the different concepts of DevOps within their organizations. And then you can see, again, some organizations are avoiding it, but typically there's a reason there, right? For whatever reason, it's not applicable to their organization. There are I would suggest in this day and age, very few organizations out there who are just flat out saying, no, we don't want to reap the productivity benefits that we get with DevOps. And I think the other thing to consider with DevOps is that, again, using air quotes here, doing DevOps can mean a lot of different things. DevOps, by definition, is really the cultural transformation. And for a lot of organizations, that translates into a lot of different practices. And you see those practices here on the slide, starting with things like version control, and then continuous integration, continuous delivery, continuous testing, and then even looking at how we do things like dark launches and blue-green deployments. All of these practices, for IT service management practitioners, I want you to understand that all of these practices translate into higher quality, more reliable products and services. What we have to do in IT service management is lighten up, right? So repeat after me: minimum viable process. We really, with IT service management, have to look at and make sure that the processes we have in place aren't standing in the way of our organization adopting DevOps. And this is from the 2020 Puppet Labs State of Devops report. And what it talks about is change management in particular. Change management has always been the bane of DevOps practitioners' existence. And you can see that in those organizations that have achieved high levels of performance with DevOps, they have high change management effectiveness. Conversely, right, those organizations that have low change management effectiveness, so they either just don't have an effective change management process, or they've got perhaps an overly bureaucratic change management process. And forgive me, we all want to introduce the word practice now. That's the Idle 4 influence coming into play now. Just recognize that it absolutely impacts your ability to be effective with DevOps. And y'all have heard me say this before. If you've heard me speak before, I was a change manager at one point in my career. And when I think back now on how we did change management, sometimes I cringe a little bit. But here's what I've come to accept. Back then, we didn't have the IT service management tools that we have today. We didn't have the integrated CI/CD pipelines that we have today. So we didn't have the technology, and we didn't have the automation practices that enabled us to automatically test for things like quality and reliability and security. We also didn't have configuration management databases, right? So how did we do it? How did we assess the risks of change? We brought a bunch of people together in a room. I used to always refer to them as a biological CMDB, right? Get a bunch of people together in a room and hope that we've got all the people in that room who can think about the risks and figure out how to mitigate the risks. We don't have to do that anymore, right? We have a lot of tools and technology that we can use today to do all of that automatically. So let's remember what Deming said many, many years ago: cease dependence on inspection to achieve quality. And really, in the context of the CAB in particular, that was validated in the 2014 State of Devops report, that the CAB wasn't achieving what it was set out to achieve, which it was to produce, minimize the risk, improve the quality of changes. It not only was it not achieving that, but it was really slowing down performance. So I challenge you in your organizations today to make it easy for people to do the right thing. So stop fighting about, are we going to use Jira? We're going to use ServiceNow. Think about how those tools can be integrated into your pipeline. Think about how we can automatically create a record when we send a change through. And I apologize, I've got some automation on my slide that I didn't realize I had, so I apologize for that. We have to make sure that we're doing those continuous tests. We have to make sure that we're passing data back through the CI/CD pipeline when there are incidents or when there are service requests that come out of the CI/CD pipeline. I apologize. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna get rid of these. I'm gonna talk amongst yourselves for 1 second. I absolutely apologize.
Donna, I'll just fill in the gap for a second to say you just made me so happy. First time in 2021, Donna said Deming.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to, there we go. All right, back in business. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense. You know, there's just a lot of debate around change management, and one of the things I encourage you to do is get your hands on the ITIL 4 practice guide, the ITIL 4 change enablement practice guide. They actually have I think it's one of the best parts of the practice guide. They have a table that kind of says, here's what it can look like in a traditional manual way. And they have beside that a column that says, here's what it can look like in an automated way. It's dramatic, right? So if you're still, you know, holding on to some kind of old school change management ways, I really I encourage you to take a look at that. So let's remember that the need for DevOps really arose as organizations were starting to leverage Agile and they were starting to apply lean principles to the IT value stream. And service management plays a critical role in that. Again, DevOps, if you think back to one of the first slides we looked at, DevOps, you know, plays a role in, you know, parts of that value stream, but not necessarily the end-to-end value stream. I think it's also important to, you know, recognize the fact that, again, all of these different ways of working come together in ITIL 4. So we talk about lean in the context of improving flow. We talk about Agile in the context of that collaborative, iterative approach, working closely with our users, making sure that we're getting their feedback, thinking about their experience. Resilient ways of working. So we're starting to see site reliability engineering emerge. We're starting to see chaos engineering be much more widely accepted within organizations, especially those organizations that really understand today that it can't just be about speed, that if we're, you know, very, very quickly sending products to market, but we can't keep those products and services up and running and delivering in a quality manner, we're just not going to be successful. And then those different continuous ways of working, continuous integration, continuous delivery, continuous deployment, continuous testing. So DevOps is really the cultural kind of aspect of that in terms of helping all of the different individuals working in all of those different areas, encouraging them to work together. So I want to spend just a minute and talk about Agile. And I love this quote from McKinsey. Once an almost exclusive domain of IT, Agile has now permeated almost every part of the business. And one of my favorite quotes is from a Spotify video, and they say, we would rather be Agile than do Agile. So we could talk about, you know, Scrum, the state of Scrum, and we could talk about the state of SAFe within our organizations. But let's really understand what being Agile is all about. And COVID has taught us a lot about being Agile. And I think we need to really hold on to the lessons that we've learned from COVID, that we need to work on objectives, right? We all need to be, you know, going in the same direction. We all need to understand what we're trying to accomplish here. I think this year we all really learned that we can't have anybody in our organizations doing work that's not of value to the organization? What are we trying to accomplish, and make sure people are working on those things? We learned a lot about team size, and Agile coaches have been talking to us for a long time about 2 pizza teams, and the optimum size for a team is 5 to 9 people. Understanding, right, that in smaller teams we can get to know each other, we can figure out how to work more effectively together, and we can just accomplish more, right? Because we reduce the number of voices that we need to hear, we reduce the number of perspectives, we just focus on what we need to accomplish and get on with accomplishing it. We saw a lot of empowerment in the past year, and that's part of safety culture as well. Understanding and giving people the opportunity to try new things and not to be afraid to try new things. Just do it in a safe way. Do it in an iterative way. Experimentation, learning, iteration. Those are not things that we have to study a framework in order to understand. So we don't have to study Scrum, or we don't have to study SAFe. Does it benefit us? Do those ways, those methodologies help us to implement these ways of working at scale? Yes. Think about SAFe. That's what it is, scaled Agile framework, right? How do we scale it up within our organizations? But even if we just embrace the ITIL guiding principles, keep it simple, progress iteratively with feedback, right? We can all increase the agility within our organizations. And then a moment about lean and value stream mapping. I like this quote from Thomas Walk: if we do not apply lean principles, we will digitalize waste. I sometimes say if you're doing things wrong and you automate them, you'll do them wrong faster. So really understand that lean is a mindset. First of all, it's really about understanding value and looking at how we deliver value to our customers. It's why value stream mapping has emerged as such an important skill set and tool within our organizations. That ability, again, to break down those silos, to really look at not only what work is being done, but why that work is being done, where that work is being done, and rooting out the waste, and then making that value adding work flow as efficiently, as effectively as possible. So it's likely that some of you have either run or participated in a value stream mapping effort in the last couple of years, because if you think about even the premise of DevOps, having dev and ops work together, having dev and security and ops and testing work together, value stream mapping is a very, very effective way to understand what work is being done at the macro level. It's likely many of you are using Kanban, so you're using tools like Trello, or you're using tools like LeanKit, right? A pull system. And part of what Kanban helps us do is focus, right? Limit work in progress, bring visibility to what work we are in fact doing, and learn not to have 10 balls in the air when we're only capable of managing 2 or 3 balls at the same time. So bring that visibility what we're doing. Toyota Kata, which is conceptually similar to the ITIL continual improvement model. What is the vision? Where are we now? Where do we want to be? How do we get there? One of the things that's a little bit different about Toyota Kata is that there's very much a focus on experimentation, and not just solving problems, but figuring out new ways altogether of working. And again, very often we do that through experimentation and through learning. So if we know the answer, if we know how to improve something, just get on with improving it. But if we're not sure, if there's disagreement on what ways to approach improving a particular practice or a particular component of our value stream, experimentation is a valuable tool that we can use there. Problem solving, and certainly root cause analysis. And I think we're beyond this, but early on in the early days of DevOps, I used to hear a lot of people kind of push back on the idea of root cause analysis. And the premise always was that there is no root cause in a complex system. And I always like to rephrase that there is no single root cause in a complex system. And we need to recognize that today. Complexity is a big part of the world that we live in. So it's not the quest for the singular root cause and thinking that there's one thing we can do, and heaven forbid that one thing we can do is, blame a human being. Understanding that we need to really look at all of the things that are causing a problem situation and figuring out, prioritizing which needs to be addressed first, and prioritizing from there. The little image on the right-hand side is from a Lean 2020 report. And admittedly, this report came out of folks who are using Lean in a manufacturing context. It's really where Lean's roots are. But look at what the goals of these organizations are: cost reduction, delivery, dependability, quality, speed, shorter innovation cycles. Sound familiar? Right? Very, very relevant to everything that we're doing in IT today. And so understand that it's not just about reducing waste and reducing cost and, downsizing your organization. That, in fact, for some organizations could be the worst thing you could possibly do, right? You might downsize and eliminate the roles or the talent within your organization that's going to make you scale back up after the recovery. And I think what's also interesting here is notice that nobody says that this isn't important, right? Or even that it's only slight, you see barely people saying that it's slightly important, right? These things are important to every organization today. And so Lean provides us a great toolkit that we can use in order to improve in all of those areas. And last, we've seen in the last couple of years the rise of site reliability engineering. So if you're not familiar with SRE, it's a discipline that incorporates aspects of software engineering and applies them to infrastructure and operations problems. It is really the ops part of DevOps from an engineering perspective. Big Dev is really looking at software engineering and the software development lifecycle. And Big Ops is really looking at engineering, infrastructure, and operations. And it's very much, it's emerging very, very quickly, but it's actually been around for a long time. Google literally wrote the book on SRE in 2003. So it's something that's been around for a long time, but it's tended to be used by larger organizations. So Google, Facebook, right? Amazon. And it's found its way into the enterprise, much the way that DevOps did, right? DevOps was around for a while, and then all of a sudden, it emerged in the enterprise. And that's what we're seeing with SRE. So Catchpoint put out a little report, and what we're seeing, kind of much the same as we did with DevOps, is it's a little bit all over the place. That we see 46% of organizations who have a dedicated SRE team. There is very much a skill set here. These people who are site reliability engineers are making a boatload of money these days because their skill set is so highly in demand. And then you see that the activities associated with SRE, and here's what's really interesting: a lot of SRE activities are really rooted in IT service management. It's things like incident management, problem management, capacity and performance management, monitoring and event management. So a lot of those practices that we see heavily emphasized on the operation side of the house, again, we're now applying this engineering approach and finding really much more modern ways of doing these practices. You see in some organizations, the operations folks are taking responsibility for these activities. And I think that's awesome. I mean, to me, it really speaks to the fact that these organizations are upskilling their operations professionals. They're giving them that engineering mindset and that engineering skill set and And I think that's what we need to do in general in this day and age. And I spoke to this, that a lot of IT service management or ITIL practices are aligned with those SRE activities, things like change management, things like configuration management, and really understanding the importance of a configuration management database and being able to understand at all times. Think what about a CMDB does. It gives you visibility into dependencies of your products and services. It helps you really analyze and understand the impact of the changes that you're making. So some of these really critical, again, traditional operational processes and practices, we're seeing that with SRE, we're applying this engineering approach and we're applying this automation approach. And here's where process models can come into play. Process models is a concept that's been in ITIL for a very, very, very long time. And I'm not going to read through the slide, but think about what process models are designed to do. They're designed to enable you to kind of proceduralize different activities. And then once you've proceduralized them, you have then the ability to automate them. So we should never stop with having a model that is just now the form that we use to create a ticket. Go beyond that and think about how we can automate them. So where do we go from here? And the answer is not back to normal. There is no going back to normal. And why is that? I think these stats are pretty amazing. Companies have accelerated the digitization of their customer and supply chain interactions by 3 to 4 years. So we just made this big quantum leap forward. Companies have increased the share of their digital products in their portfolios by 7 years, right? So some organizations that had things that were part of their longer term strategy, right? They very, very, very quickly accelerated. So it's important to understand that. And so we can't go back to where we were, right? We have to start where we are and recognize where we are and capture, most importantly, capture the lessons learned from what we've gone through, what has worked, what hasn't worked as we've gone through this past year. Another little McKinsey quote, we found that the top 10% of companies in terms of revenue growth are more than 50% more effective than their peers in testing, measuring, and executing based on what they've learned. These organizations are really good at leveraging lessons learned, whether the lesson was, hey, let's never do that again, or, wow, we were wildly successful with that. How can we scale it up within our organization? So it's really important to start where we are and embrace those ITIL 4 guiding principles, right? Start now, start where you are, progress iteratively, continuously experiment and learn and improve. And there's a lot we can learn from those high performing organizations in terms of why it's important to think about those outcomes and think about how we can leverage technology, particularly digital technology, in order to achieve those outcomes. And think about customer experience and understand what an important role that plays as we go forward. It's also important that we all hone our skills. And this particular image is from the 2020 DevOps Institute upskilling report, and they talk about the need for human skills. They talk about the need for process and framework skills, functional skills, automation skills, and technology skills. Those process and framework skills were actually #1 on their list of must-have skills. And what that speaks to is how important it is that we all understand all these different things we've been talking about, ITIL and Agile and Lean and DevOps, and really understand also that there's extensive bodies of knowledge out there that we can draw from. So each and every one of you, depending on the role in your particular organization, can draw different parts and pieces from ITIL, for example. But if you can underlay that with Agile thinking and Lean thinking, we're going to be much more successful. And also then understanding that importance of being able to distinguish between thinking about things at the value stream level and down at the process level. We have to understand when to do what. So here you see that slide where they talk about those process skills and that knowledge really being a number one must-have skill. And behind that then is automation. If you're doing things wrong and you automate them, you'll do them wrong faster. And last but not least, notice that under that is the soft skills. So what can we take away from the past year, and what can we take into the future? Just be human. You know, if nothing else came out of this year, I do think we all developed a greater sense of empathy. We all developed a greater ability to just work together with other people and just understand, right? We're all humans. We're all in this together, and we've got to kind of, you know, we've got to work together. We also really have to think about in this day and age how important it is to share our knowledge and share our experiences, have the courage, right, to be willing to share. Long gone are the days where we can think that, you know, if I hoard my knowledge, okay, I have greater job security. That's probably not the reality. Most of our jobs are being obsoleted on a regular basis. So we always have to be looking to upskill and to think about, right, what is the next step in our journey. So I've included some slides in the rest of this presentation that talk about the ITIL certification scheme, that talk about the different DevOps classes that we offer, talk about our process design classes like CPD, and we have a value stream mapping class. But I'd really like to spend a little bit of time just doing, just answering some questions. So I'm gonna kind of scroll back very quickly, and Lisa, if you've kind of teed up any questions for me, that would be great as well. And I'm seeing, you know, and so somebody commented, how do you see practices such as organizational change management and technical business management integrating with other practices? So interestingly enough, Leslie, one of the new practices in ITIL version 4 is in fact organizational change management. And I'm shocked actually that I didn't include that in this presentation somewhere along the way. Really recognizing the people side of things and the need to think about the human toll that everything we've been doing has had on people, and understanding that people learn and they take in new information in different ways, and we have to help people along. You know, there's a lot of change going on in our organizations, in our industry. So we have to think about the people, and what organizational change management does is give us, you know, practices that we can use in order to do that in terms of equipping people for the future, in terms of providing the motivation techniques that we need to help people get excited and see that sense of urgency. It's very much a critical practice. It's one of the things we all give a nod to and say is critical. But we haven't necessarily recognized that it is a practice in and of itself, and we need to, you know, have people who are skilled and know how to manage organizational change. And there is, in fact, a process for doing it. So it absolutely is critical, and I think it's the overarching practice that we need to think about in the context of everything else we're doing with the introduction of all of these different frameworks. And technical business management, I'm not 100% sure what you mean there. I mean, is that, and I'm going to ask you to kind of post a question or a follow-up question. Are you referring to things like business relationship management and business analysis, those types of things? I'm gonna kind of go down that path. We understand that today, you know, more and more IT organizations are being embedded into business units, and part of why organizations are doing that is so that technical professionals can in fact understand what the goals of that business unit are, understand really what the needs of that particular business unit are, and become experts in whatever that particular line of business is. Instead of being very technology centric, I'm a server administrator, I'm somebody that is supporting the line of business in our company that delivers X product, and really helping that line of business to become more successful. So I do very much think we all in this day and age need to become much more proficient in what business we're in, what enables our business to be successful, what enables our business to be competitive. And part of what Idle 4's new digital and IT strategy course really speaks to that, right? It spends very, very little time, in fact, talking about the IT organization itself. And it really focuses on the business and how the business can be successful using digital technology. So I hope that is an answer to that question. So how do we bring along other bodies like auditors as we mature our internal processes like change management? So I think, first of all, you have to show proof of concept. I mean, again, DevOps has been around for a long time. And if you go to IT Revolution's website, I think it's just itrevolution.com. They actually have an audit toolkit for DevOps that provides you some great white papers that talk about the relationship between DevOps and audit. ISACA also has put out a really great white paper on DevOps and audit. So you can begin with providing that information to your auditors. And then to some extent, you just need to work closely with them and show them proof of concept, show them how you can automatically produce the evidence that they require. Show them how that you're ensuring that that evidence hasn't been tampered with along the way. So again, there's a lot of great information out there. A lot of organizations, think about it, there's a lot of big banks, there's a lot of big insurance companies that are really some of the highest performing enterprises in DevOps. So if they can figure out how to do it in heavily regulated environments, then it's really a matter of providing that information to your auditors and working with them. You might need to, educate them a little bit, but there's lots of great information out there to help you to do that. Again, go to places like ISACA, go to places like IT Revolution. They've got some great papers and toolkits that will help you with that. So separation of duties actually has been, part of her question also was about separation of duties. Separation of duties, that concept has been dispelled a little bit. In Idle 4 High Velocity IT, we talk about the fact that why do you separate duties? It's to ensure, right? It's a control mechanism. But if you have the ability to satisfy that control in some other way, like for example, through automation, right? So rather than having a separate human being handle some particular activity, you have technology handle that activity, then that does satisfy the control that was typically addressed with separation of duties. In fact, in high velocity IT, we refer to integration of duties, right? To speak to that fact that, again, it is in fact a concept that has been dispelled through a lot of the great automation advancements that have occurred with DevOps. So is there an example of how IDLE and SRE can be integrated? So, I think I mentioned that, SREs, I'm going to use in the term of a site reliability engineer. What does a site reliability engineer do? They do things like they handle incidents. They do things like a lot of problem management. They're very, very involved in the deployment of changes. So really just by virtue of the activities that they are performing, you see, right, how, what an important role IDLE can play, not only in providing guidance in terms of those particular practices. So, we now have the IDLE 4 practices, but we also have in high velocity IT again, where we talk about other disciplines that have really come from SRE. So the things like blameless postmortems, right? If you've read the book on SRE, they have a whole entire chapter about how to do effective blameless postmortems. They talk a lot about things like chaos engineering, right? How to improve the reliability of our environments by running experiments and seeing how our organization, how our systems perform when we disrupt them, right? And we do it intentionally, and we do it in a very, very safe way, but it's increasingly becoming an accepted way of improving the reliability of our products and services. So a lot of the kind of practices that are, and I'm using that word in terms of way of working, not in the terms of an IDLE 4 practice. It's coming, there, a lot of those ways of working that are introduced in high velocity IT are actually being drawn from SRE and can also then benefit SRE. SRE is like anything else. You're going to have some people who are very, very highly skilled, and you're always going to have folks who are just getting started. If you think about these organizations where they're skilling up their system administrators to be SREs, one of the places they could start is with an IDLE class and with, attending IDLE for high velocity IT, for example, to understand.
Donna?
Yes.
I'm so sorry. I'm going to interject just for a moment because we are actually a little bit over time. It was a lot of information, and I want to hear you finish, please, answering that question. But for those that have to drop off, before you go, we have a very quick poll. Donna, if you could throw up that last poll question for us, please. So we've got Jeff Rumberg, who is one of the kind of industry keynote speakers, who annually very graciously does a webinar for Itsm Academy. And he threw out 3 topics to us for our February webinar. And we thought it would be fun to let you guys decide. So, Donna, do you see that poll? Can you put it up for me?
It is up.
Oh, great. Thank you. I can tell you, reading through the description, each one of them have sincere takeaways. He's using actual case studies, how this organization reached their goal of 50% reduction in total incidents, not in a year, but in less than 6 months. I mean, each one of them have that kind of takeaway. So if you guys want to just go through for us and pick, then we will announce, well, I guess we will all see today what the winner is, and that's the webinar that we will do for February. We also have some practitioners coming in to talk this year about SRE and lots of other fun topics planned. But, looking at the list of folks with us today, it's a lot of people that have been with us doing these webinars since 2007. As you know, we really listen to your feedback. So when you go to exit the webinar, there will be an opportunity for you to put in topics that you would like covered. If there's anything you want covered, please put it in there, because that's really how we build our webinar catalog for you guys. All right. And thank you very much. Again, Happy New Year, anyone who has to go. And then back to you, Donna.
Okay, so we have 62% have voted, 17% hacking IDLE knowledge management, 39% hacking IDLE problem management, 42% the metrics of shift left. And any of you who know Jeff Rumberg, he loves a good metrics webinar. I think hacking IDLE knowledge management, I would vote for that one, not to encourage anybody, but I'm sure you've heard some of the statistics that things like artificial intelligence, machine learning, your organization's ability to be successful with those things is really based on your foundation of knowledge management. So it's one of those practices that I think is going to increasingly, it's had visibility for a long time, but it's going to increasingly gain visibility as organizations understand that they're just not going to see the ROI on AI and machine learning if they don't get with the knowledge management program.
And part of the description for that is attendees of the webinar will learn the 4 simple but effective steps this organization took to realize all the benefits of ITIL without going through the pain of maturing the formal ITIL practice of knowledge management. Additionally, attendees will learn the key success factors this organization used to measure their progress. They all, I mean, Jeff's awesome, and they all 3 look amazing. I feel like this is, you know, winner, winner, or bigger chicken dinner.
Yeah, but I think the winner, people have stopped voting at this point, so the winner is the metrics of shift left, which sounds awesome.
It does sound awesome. Thank you.
So thank you, everybody. So yeah, I mean, I'm gonna wrap it. I mean, I think I've gotten all of the questions. I was within a second of getting to the end of my other answer. So thank you all very, very much for attending today. Hope you found it useful. And if nothing else, again, I think it's just an exciting time for us because those of you who've been kind of learning about these different ways of working, now the challenge going forward is to figure out how to enable them to work in your organizations and continuously improve them going forward, but understanding that the most success is going to come by improving them, you know, as an integrated and aligned set of frameworks and not, you know, an either or conversation. So thank you all, everybody. Have a great day. Happy New Year.